What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the N.E.R.D. Never Ending Ridiculous Discussions Film and TV Podcast, your bi weekly podcast for the latest news, reviews, and impressions for everything film and TV. I am your host this week, Dominic Spizzeri, joined by my co host and good friend, Kayla Smith. How you doing today, Kayla?
I'm doing good, Dom. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. For those of you who are new to NERD, this is not the only NERD podcast we have. We also have the NERD Gaming Podcast, hosted by Brian Achenbach and co-hosted by myself. Our first episode, came out last week. We talked about everything E3 related. So if you are a gamer, be sure to check out that podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube. So this week, quite a lot happened, and by that we mean two stories. So the first thing that happened is the prequel series announced for Supernatural, which was quite an announcement, Kayla, was it not?
Yeah. So for those of us who do watch Supernatural, um, we know that Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles, who played Sam and Dean Winchester over the course of 15 seasons, were very close. They were in each other's weddings. They met their wives on the show. They have a whiskey company together, and it turns out that Jensen actually was never let Jared Padalecki know that he was developing a spin-off series about their on-screen parents, Mary and Dean Winchester, or Mary and John Winchester, my bad. Um, we found this out because at about 9 o'clock on the 24th, Jared tweeted, "Dude, happy for you. Wish I heard about this some other way than Twitter. I'm excited to watch, but bummed Sam Winchester had no involvement whatsoever." Immediately, Twitter went to war and basically was like, hey, this has to be a joke, right? Turns out it was not a joke. He tweeted back at somebody at about, um, oh, later that night, and he said, no, it's not. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I'm gutted. He also tweeted at one of the producers at Tu Brute, wow, what a truly awful thing you've done. Bravo, you coward.
So
Everybody thought, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just for clarification, this story, this show is just announced in beginning pre-production, right? There's no filming, there's no actors or anything
No,
with.
it's still got quite a long way to go before they get any filming done, any script, any casting done for this. And the following morning, Jared immediately went back to Twitter and asked everybody to please stop. Thank you for the love. Please, please do not send any hate or threats. I care deeply about everybody involved and would be in true misery if any of them were harmed or threatened, which I think speaks to kind of the cancel culture violence that we're living in with some of these Twitter people now and stars.
So they're getting violent threats between just because the one actor wasn't even involved.
Right. Yeah, they were already lashing out at Jensen and everybody involved with the project, for Jared Padalecki, which, I just think I always find that kind of crazy that people start sending hate immediately when something goes even slightly awry. In any case, it turns out that Jared and Jensen got in contact with each other. He ended up tweeting again. Jensen and I had a great conversation, as we often do, and things are going well. The show is at the start of process with miles to go. We've been on a lot of roads together, and sometimes those damn roads have bumps. Bumps don't stop us. Brothers once, brothers always. Ackles tweets back, I love you, Jer Pad. Miss those discussions. I forgot how much FaceTime we always used to have. I miss that too. I know you're busy, just like me, but you're still my brother. I miss you, mate. And honestly, for me, it's just really sweet that they were able to develop such a strong bond. And really, I think, again, in this age of watching all these feuds go down, watching how violent and angry people will get with each other in Hollywood, it's nice to see that people can have a rational conversation with each other, say, hey, you made me upset, talk it out, and get over it and move on.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And of course, violent threats from anyone on Twitter or any kind of social media is never okay. And if you're a listener of this and, TV or film gets announced or any media you like, don't ever threaten. The creators of it, they're human beings, and of course people make mistakes, but never threaten violence or anything like that. It's okay to critique, but don't ever be violent. Don't be a jerk. We don't want to be like that. But as for fans of the show, I mean, this must be exciting. Maybe a little disappointing that not everyone of the original crew is involved. And especially if it's a prequel series about their parents, I would assume that the original actors, most of the original actors, are probably not even going to be in this series. It's probably they're not even gonna have flashbacks or anything like that. So I guess it should be exciting for fans of Supernatural to get this brand new series. Obviously, Supernatural is very popular. It went on for 15 seasons, and I know a lot of people who are crazy about it. Me personally, little before my time, I only recently saw Supernatural episodes of the first season. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little too 2004 for me to really get into it. But as a
Yeah.
fan, you like Supernatural, I believe. As a fan, are you excited about the idea of them returning? Do you hope this gets another 15 years of Supernatural lore?
I don't know. It's kind of a bittersweet thing for me. You know, the show was only originally supposed to run 5 seasons, and I thought that the storytelling that they did throughout those 5 seasons was incredible. And for me, it started to get a little stale, which is why I frankly never made it to the end. However, you know, I think a story about their parents could be really intriguing, really interesting. They were both monster hunters. Before they had their kids, it was a supernatural thing that took their lives. So I think it could be really interesting to see what they did before they had their children.
Yeah, absolutely. For Supernatural fans, I hope you get what you're looking for from this. Obviously, there's really not much more we can really say about this. This was just announced a couple days ago. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming months when they give a little bit more information on the show. Maybe more of the original production staff can get involved so we can prevent some fan backlash. Obviously, fan backlash is never okay when it's threatening like this, but for the Supernatural
Yeah.
fans, hopefully they get what they want.
Yeah, I think that that is going to be really cool. I think if they can get Jared Padalecki on board, that could also be potentially interesting because, you know, you spend 15 years with a character, you think that you're kind of the expert on who that person is and the people that raised them. So it could be really interesting. Speaking of people who have been involved with series for a very long time, let's talk about the Michael Bay situation.
Yes, the second story for today that there's a new Transformers movie. It's going to take place, from my understanding, it's going to take place in the Michael Bay universe, which I also believe the Bumblebee movie also as well. However, Michael Bay is not going to be attached to it. And they even said that they're going to incorporate elements from the Beast Wars Transformers series from the mid 90s, I believe, into it. Now, for me, this is super exciting. Beast Wars, back in the day, was my very first introduction to Transformers. I wasn't part of Transformers with the original 80s series like a lot of people were. I was introduced with Optimus Primal and Megatron as a T-Rex. So this is super cool to me to see this. And the fact that the elements that I always personally, and no offense to Michael Bay, but the elements that I always thought brought the series down, which was his directing and story choices, the fact that he's not going to be involved with this one, and I know Bumblebee was a fairly decent movie. This is super exciting to see just another element of my childhood coming back to life on the big screen. Kayla, does this do anything for you?
So I was not introduced to the Beast Wars storyline as a child. However, you know, I was in the movie theaters growing up watching these Michael Bay movies, Transformers, and you know, I found the first couple pretty good, and then it just kind of lost it for me at some point. You know, just blowing stuff up doesn't do it for me anymore. However, I think that taking this, you know, technology driven universe and turning them into T-Rexes and whatnot, that sounds really cool to me. I'm there. Give me my ticket.
Oh, that's all I need. I guess my big question is, how are they going to do it? Because Beast Wars, as a plot, took place. If I remember correctly, it took place years before humans even showed up on Earth. So it's a very strange situation, or at least maybe humans were populated, but like it took place maybe like during the caveman era, especially since like there were dinosaurs involved. I mean, it's been a long time since I've watched that series. I don't exactly remember how it worked, but I'm interested to see if they go that route, if they somehow go back in time. Is this a movie we're only going to get Transformers finally? Is there going to be no humans in it? I highly doubt that, but I'm definitely curious to see what happens. They have a scheduled release, I believe, for 2022. And as this movie just got announced, I'm not sure exactly how deep in production there is. The majority of these movies that are announced this early usually get delayed. But we're near the end of the pandemic, I guess you can say, where I know a lot of people are getting their vaccination. So filming might be a little bit easier depending on what franchise and what exactly you're doing in the movie. So I am very curious to know where this is going to go. I think they did confirm it's live action, though. It's not going to be an animated movie, which I'm definitely prefer. I want to see I want to see these guys in a more realistic setting. We have plenty of Transformers animation, but we'll see exactly how they do it in the coming months.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I think that you never had to doubt the quality of how nice it looked on the films, right? Watching these giant robots transform into cars and out of cars or whatnot. So I think seeing them transform into monsters could be really, really cool, especially since we already know they can create these really cool, realistic looking things thanks to James Cameron and Avatar.
Oh, exactly. So all I need is some cool action scenes, a decent enough story, and a lot less of the inappropriate comedy, especially from the second Transformers movie. Let's just have a fun, awesome movie. That's all I need, and we'll all be happy.
There's nothing wrong with some good, just clean family movies. And speaking of family movies, we should probably talk about Luca, which came out on June 13th.
That it did. Luca, were a movie that came out of nowhere. I had no knowledge of Luca. I never saw a trailer for it. I didn't know Pixar was releasing another movie this year, especially since I believe they just released one. I believe earlier this year, maybe late last year. I can't remember what it is, but I swear this is the second new Pixar movie we've got in the last 6 months.
Yeah, we got Soul in December.
That's right. We did get Soul. We got that, I believe, December, January. That was a very good movie. I really enjoyed that one.
I I thought it was a strong outing. I had some issues with again these halfway steps into these topics that Disney is trying to do. You know, Soul was about people of color. You and I, not people of color. Let's be upfront, listeners. I'm white. I
Yes.
I am white. I am straight. So this is all coming from an ally's perspective. But I had some issues with Soul on that way. I thought they took some half steps. You know, they put a white person in the black person's body for most of the film. Um, you didn't really get to see a lot of autonomy, but for having your first film that is really just a strong, let's look at people of color and their culture, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, and again, I've only seen Soul once. I remember really liking it. I think I have to agree with you. And if there was some commentary on POC in Soul, I'd have to actually rewatch it because, to be frank, I don't remember there being any commentary. And that might be your point, is that they really didn't nail into that. Maybe that wasn't their goal. Um, but I'd have to rewatch that movie to really comment on whether or not I even got that impression. But to keep it more focused on Luca,
Right.
um, let's talk about, as you referenced it, you're saying that Luca was another movie that you felt like really hit that halfway point. You want to dive more into that?
Yeah. You know, the animation is gorgeous, which you can always expect from Pixar. You know, the water animation, the fish in the sky that are stars. It's at no point is it not a visually stunning movie, and at no point is it not a really enjoyable movie. But we were talking about this a little bit prior, that I thought that it was about just nice male heteronormative friendship, and really getting to see two boys being friends without any of that toxic masculinity mixed in. But you had a slightly different opinion.
Yeah, I definitely got the vibe. And for reference, I watched this with my partner, and I asked her if she got this vibe when the movie was done, and she didn't catch it at all. And I think this just kind of goes to what you were saying, like this halfway step. I got strong vibes of this being a movie about LGBTQ plus characters, especially with the main character Luca, and then the secondary character Alberto, where there's many scenes where they clearly have some sort of connection that definitely felt a little bit more beyond just standard friends. With scenes with Luca like putting his arms around Alberto, where there's a scene in the alley, and oh, just for reference. We are going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory. We're going to try not to spoil like every single plot point of this movie, but if you haven't seen Luca yet, skip to when we talk about the next TV show or movie. But there is a scene in an alley with one of the characters, and I can't remember his name, but
The
the more
biker, right?
Micah.
The biker,
Yes, though there's a
the
biker Italian.
cyclist.
Yeah, and him saying things like I don't want you guys in my town. You're not welcome here." And then the entire plot of the story being, these two boys, specifically just these two, are sea monsters that, when they go into water, they turn into sea monsters, but when they're on land, they look like humans. The entire town is hunting sea monsters. They're not welcome there. And then the whole aspect of Luca, the main character, his main story is his parents, don't want him to go to the surface, like don't want him to be seen in public. They want to hide him away, which they really never give an explanation as to why up until the ending, where they kind of reference them being scared with him being in the public now, like him being publicly known as a sea monster. And they even have a line in the movie where we're scared that people might not accept him for who he is. And I think the metaphor of it being an LGBTQ plus is very, in my opinion, it's very obvious. What I personally wish, and I think to get to your point of it just going halfway, is I really wish they had Luca and Alberto hold hands. Just go that extra mile where we get the metaphor of them going out, but I kind of wish that they didn't just keep it too safe. Obviously, these characters are like 11 years old. We're not gonna, ask for them like to kiss on screen. Like I can understand them being children, them being boys, growing up into the teenage years, discovering who they are. I can understand them not going that far, but personally, I just feel like they could go the extra step of really focusing on why the parents didn't want him to go on land, and why is it that there's only 4 sea monsters in the movie. There's the parents, Alberto, and Luca, and that's it. So
Yeah.
what about everybody else? I really think they went halfway with it, and I get it, it's for
Yeah.
kids, but I wish they just would have went that extra mile, to really just encompass the fact that like we get what this movie's about, and I'm all for it. It's just when I asked my girlfriend at the end, she didn't get any of that impression. When I explained it to her, she even went, "I don't know if it's about that." Like, and I kind of wish, as somebody who picks up on metaphors, people who maybe don't catch on to that, I wish they kind of just went that extra step to really just say like, "No, this is it."
Yeah. Actually, the more that we have this discussion, the more that it becomes obvious to me that the notes are there, right? You're getting these indications between the grandma at the end saying, well, some people will accept Luca, some won't. He'll have to learn to live with it. He'll have to learn to be okay with it. You pointing out they spend all of this time together. He's spending the night with him. They're, very clearly very close to each other. And it's not that we need, a shoved in your face, hit me over the head with it. But yeah, if they hold hands, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. But you continually keep seeing these half steps. In the recent remake of Beauty and the Beast, they ended up having Josh Gad, dancing with a man at the end. They had him, doing cross dressing. So I don't really understand why it would have been so hard to take it that extra step, especially when you already had Little Mermaid as a precursor for, a fish person becoming a human. And they developed this whole huge expansive universe for why Ariel would want to stay under the water, but there's really no motivation for him to want to stay because, yeah, you only see him hurting his fish and with his parents.
Yeah, it's definitely a world that I wish they expanded on. But like that being said, like this movie does have some negatives, but I don't just want to focus on honestly the very few negatives this movie has. I think the characters are actually, really well. You already commented on the animation, and the animation is very good. But the story itself, I think, is interesting. I thought it was fun. I was never bored. There is a definitely underused character with I don't know if you remember his uncle that's from the Under the Sea. That character is only in two scenes, one during the movie and then one after the credits. I don't know if you saw that scene or not. My favorite character of the entire movie was that uncle because he's so creepy and awesome, and hilarious, and he was highly underutilized. But
Okay.
this movie is, I definitely think it's really good. If you're looking for a new Pixar movie, you're looking for something on Disney Plus that isn't Marvel or Star Wars related. This is definitely a movie that's worth checking out, in my opinion. I think the positives of this movie definitely outweigh the negatives. I just think the definite message this movie was trying to pursue, I think could have been a little bit better. But that being said, I think it's a phenomenal movie, one that I would definitely rewatch again. Not one of Pixar's best. It's no Toy Story. It's no Monsters Inc. But I think for what they were trying to get out and what they were trying to do, I think it's a good movie. But it definitely feels like a B tier Pixar movie. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, absolutely. I think that for what, not every movie, let's be clear, not every movie needs to be a hit over the head social message. That's just one aspect that we are, hitting on right now. But, as far as portraying the Italian culture, I have been informed by one of my friends who is entirely Italian that her sister was crying. She was so happy. Um, and it's just a joyful movie. You're right, it's fun. Even when there's not direct plot going on, there's something pretty to be watching. There's something interesting to be watching. And I think it's funny that you bring up the uncle because for me, my favorite character was the cat. Oh God, that cat made me laugh every time. Thought it was hilarious.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's so many memorable characters in this movie. Um, but yeah, it definitely just kind of feels like just kind of a strange movie. And like I said when we started this, I had no idea this movie even existed, and I just kind of question why. Um,
That
and I've
happened
even
with
asked,
Frozen though too. They for Frozen they did hardly Disney did hardly any advertising, then they just dropped the movie. But again, Frozen was pre-pandemic. They can't keep doing this. I saw maybe one trailer for Luca, and they started this trend of releasing trailers that don't tell you anything, or they don't release trailers at all, and they just expect us to show up to the movie theater. And to some extent, you see a Disney or Pixar trailer, you go see it. But we still need to be advertising because we're seeing these streaming services, they're not grossing nearly as much money as they were pre-pandemic.
I'm not entirely sure. My assumption is that they potentially know the social commentary this movie's hitting, and maybe being Disney, and they are, I don't want to say conservative at all, but they are an older company and they do have some conservative values. I could definitely see them kind of leaning towards the side of, we're going to release this movie. We know it's going to do well. We know it's going to make its money. It's Pixar, it's Disney. It's going to make it, but them just not really pushing it. I even asked some friends around, like, hey, have you ever heard of Luca? And none of them knew about it. None of them knew about it. And they only saw images of it because they had Disney Plus and it showed up. Um, so, which just kind of says a lot to me. And it's kind of a shame because I do feel like they kind of put this movie out just to be found, which is just a shame because the movie is very good. It's very fun watch. And it's definitely something if
Hmm.
you have Disney Plus that I recommend watching it. If you like Pixar movies, you have Disney Plus, you have kids, check it out. But I can't help but wonder, hey, why did you only half this? Is it pandemic related? Does it have to do with advertisement funds? Because this is Disney. Disney can buy the earth twice and probably still have leftover money. Um, So it is kind of questioned, and I can't help but wonder maybe they did it because I think this movie is pretty obviously an LGBT metaphor, and maybe they just were afraid of like a more perspective that isn't as open to it, and they didn't want that negative backlash. I don't really
Unfor-
know.
we don't have a good answer for it. They did something similar with Soul where, we got trailers for it, but again, they were very vague. There weren't a ton of them. And the other thing that we should be comparing this to is around the time Soul came out, Mulan was released on Disney Plus a couple months prior, and that was a $20 access. And Cruella was released as well, which we haven't made it to viewers yet, but we'll get there eventually. Um, But Cruella also has the $20 access fee, but they're releasing these Pixar films for free and they're not advertising them well.
Well, I remember everyone knowing about Soul. I remember when Soul came out, everyone was kind of talking about it. I know a lot of my friends have heard about it, and I know Soul's soundtrack definitely did get some positive buzz. So a lot of people knew about it, mostly just from its soundtrack. And I know I was a big fan of the soundtrack. I love Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. He worked on the soundtrack, so of course I knew that soundtrack. I have it downloaded. I love it so much. But I know, and Mulan was advertised like crazy because that movie was supposed to come out in early 2020, I believe, or mid 2020, and then got pushed around because of the pandemic. But yeah, Luca just seems like this random movie that just came out, and here it is. And you might watch it, and you might not watch it. And for anyone who's listening to this, if you've just now hearing about Luca, definitely worth checking it out. If you've
Please.
already seen it, leave a comment or tweet at us. Tell us what your impression is. See if you agree with us. And I hope Disney starts promoting more of these Pixar films. Pixar is one of their best studios. I don't know about you, but I can only think of maybe one or two that really didn't hit it for me. And it's mostly Cars and Cars 2. But other than that, Pixar is either a good or just absolutely amazing. Some of the best films you'll ever watch. So it's a shame that they're really putting these two to side. But if you have Disney Plus, you can stream it with no extra cost now. Check out Luca, and you should definitely check out Soul as well. Both fantastic films.
Yes. Despite some of the negatives we're talking about for both of them, they still hold up really well, and they're, like I said, great outings for Pixar, you know. We're here to talk about the good and the bad, but they're, yeah, great animation, great music, and overall a great story, even if they are only going halfway.
But staying on the Disney Plus train, Luca isn't the only thing that's coming out on Disney Plus. On the Marvel side of things, we have Loki. And we've seen at this point up to 3 episodes. We are recording on a Sunday, so episode 4 is coming out on Wednesday. It may already be out by the time this episode gets up on streaming services. So at this point, we're probably going to spoil up to episode 3, and then we'll just kind of give our general impressions of the first 3 episodes of Loki. So this being essentially a series that takes place in a really weird spot in the timeline, just because of the nature of the show. It's kind of all over the place. So it kind of takes place. It obviously stars the Loki from Endgame that takes the Tesseract and then disappears in around the middle of the movie, where they're trying to collect the Infinity Stones to wish back everybody. So this movie uses that Loki, not the Loki that we've kind of gotten used to in the last 10 years of Marvel movies after Avengers 1. So this Loki is still kind of I guess you can say, more of a villainous type character, and we're kind of learning more about his mindset as it goes on. So with the first 3 episodes, we got introduced to the TVA and Owen Wilson's character, who I absolutely love. I love Owen Wilson and everything he does. And then episode 2, we got revealed with Lady Loki, and then episode 3, we're following Lady Loki and Loki pretty much exclusively, with them trying to escape this time period they got trapped in. Obviously, I don't want to do a complete, plot summary. For those of you who watch the show, I assume you've already watched the show, which is probably why you listen to this section. And if you haven't watched up to episode 3, you're probably skipping this. So we're just kind of going to reference where it is. But Loki, as it is with these 3 episodes, Kayla, how are you feeling about it?
I I'm mixed feelings right now. So first two episodes were really strong outings for me. I thought they were great, so fun. Again, you spoke to Owen Wilson's character. Owen Wilson is incredible. You know, you never have to doubt Marvel for creating good characters with intriguing backstories or intriguing characters in general. Um, but this most recent episode, really was kind of a step back for me. You know, you talked a little bit about the fact that we get Loki from Endgame, who then decides to take the Tesseract, and that's how he winds up at the TVA. And for me, I love Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki. I loved watching him throughout the course of the 10 years with the little bit of character development they did. So, really seeing him kind of regress in that manner for me has been really tough because I liked seeing how he, was evil and then good and then evil. And then finally, when Ragnarok comes, if you haven't already watched the Marvel movies, I'm sorry, massive spoiler, Asgard's gone. And you finally really get to see this huge change in character, and seeing that massive regression for me has been sad. But yeah, this most recent episode was really just kind of weak.
I absolutely agree with you. The first two episodes, well, I'm not as in agreement with the regression of Loki, whereas I completely understand your point there. This is obviously a character that all of his development post 2012, I think is when the first Avengers came out, is gone. It doesn't exist. I really think the first two episodes really emphasized where we can go, though, with a Loki from this time frame. I think it's very interesting how they really broke into his psyche. The world they created is really cool. And the whole idea of Loki being a time cop, even if it's just for one season, maybe they continue this with multiple seasons. I don't know if they've talked about that yet. I think it's really cool. The first two episodes alone were fantastic. And I know the cliffhanger ending with Lady Loki being revealed and her saying, "This isn't about you," really hit me. And I was super excited for episode 3. And like you said, boy, was I disappointed with episode 3. It had a couple elements to expand on Loki and obviously Lady Loki, whose name is Sylvia, by the way. We should actually call her character name that got revealed. And it answers pretty much nothing with the series. It gave one little plot development, being that all the characters in the TVA are actually variant. They're time variants, which we didn't know before, which is really interesting, and I really can't wait to see where they go with that. As far as the rest of the episode, it starts with Loki and Sylvia on a certain planet during right before an apocalypse. They have no way to get off the planet, and they're bickering. And it ends with Loki and Sylvia on a planet bickering about getting off the planet. So it's kind of an episode where, besides that one little detail that Sylvia reveals about them being variants, nothing really happens in this episode. It's just kind of just a little bit more character development, particularly with them on the train when they speak with each other. But even that scene, I know I have some qualms with it. It just feels pretty forced with the conversation they have. I felt like it felt really out of character for Loki to and Loki and Sylvia to start talking about love and love as a metaphor, particularly with this show. And I don't know if you agree with this. The show doesn't seem to be focusing on the aspect of love, and then all of a sudden it just kind of came up. We've never known Loki as a character to be in love with anyone. We've never known him to be in a relationship with any characters. And then all of a sudden for him to say, is there somebody for Sylvia that she's in her life? And then kind of Loki to bring that up just seemed really out of character. It didn't really make any sense. And I'm really interested to know if that's actually going to go anywhere. Because it felt like really out of character for the Loki that we know. And I think for them to really justify this episode, because I really do feel like nothing happened in this episode for the plot. It really didn't go anywhere. I really hope in the next coming episodes, which I believe we have 3 more, they really emphasis on why would Loki bring that up? Why would he bring up another version of himself, a potentially, time variant of himself, being in love with somebody? Like, do you think Loki has like some kind of relationship? Do you think he has something that would want him to talk about love and create love as a dagger metaphor?
So, first off, I love the love as a dagger metaphor. I would just like to throw that out there. I thought that that was awesome and smart writing on my part. On my part, I'm the one that wrote it. Um, that being said, I completely agree with you that it really just felt odd. And what's interesting is that when I was first watching it, it felt like a completely natural question to me. You don't see Loki alone a lot, sitting stuck in a conversation with somebody, let alone with a woman. So him being the kind of mischief maker, kind of vagrant type person that he is, it makes sense for me initially that he doesn't know what to say to a woman, so she must have a love life. But the more that I was sitting on it, the more I kind of came to agree with you that it just felt odd and shoehorned, especially since even prior to the series coming out, it was just news article after news article after news article. Hey, remember, don't forget, Loki, the god from Norse mythology, is gender fluid, which means that he's probably bisexual. And you want to talk about leagues of differences between going halfway and beating you over the head. It just felt really odd. And what was most disappointing to me was the fact that he came up with this really great idea. Let's save the Ark. We'll save the Ark. We'll get off the planet. And that could have been a really, really cool action sequence of them actually getting onto this ship that we've never seen before. We have no idea what it looks like. Them figuring out how to take control of it, get it off the planet. And then nothing. I mean, for me, even the sequence of them trying to get onto the Ark was just really disappointing, honestly, because it's just them getting rained down on and nothing's happening even in that scene. So really, you're right. The only thing that really happened of any consequence is him asking about her love life and Sylvie mentioning that, yeah, by the way, everybody's variants, which was the thing I was most intrigued by. I was most intrigued by that because you get these references to Owen Wilson being so dedicated to the TVA, him going to talking to his boss, and you see how devoted he is, how much he believes in the TVA, how much he believes in his job, how much everybody believes in this thing, and to find out that the very variants that they are hunting, they are themselves. And is Owen Wilson obsessed with jet skis because he was a human and he used to ride jet skis and he just has no memory? That's what I really want more of.
Yeah, and that's definitely what the show is leaning to. And I think the most disappointing aspect about this episode is knowing that there's only three more, is having the first two being so packed and just nonstop. And I mean, the show is a little slow. Like, I will admit, it is kind of a slow burn, and I personally love that. I really like the pace of the first two episodes, and then this third one, just really having no consequence to the story besides a couple little details, one of which may not even go anywhere. Which I'm talking about Loki's love. Like, they may not even comment on that again.
Right.
So the only detail that really matters is the whole TVA with them being variants. So the fact that there's only three episodes and they wasted, in my opinion, an entire episode with really little to no consequence on the story, just kind of, it disappoints me to know that we only have three episodes left to really get somewhere. But, I mean, Marvel has disappointed me at first before and then has reeled me right in. As the time went on, I definitely think Marvel has a way of redeeming past movies with future ones. I don't know about you. I wasn't crazy about a lot of Phase 2 movies. And as time went on, when we got Phase 3 and then, we got Endgame, as I rewatched movies from Phase 2, I liked them a lot more. So what I'm hoping is 4, 5, and 6 really takes 3 and just, makes it a lot more relevant. I hope there's really meaning to this, the conversations they have. and makes a rewatch of this series not make this episode, in my opinion, skippable. Which is kind of a shame because this being the third Marvel TV series on Disney Plus, released in the last year and a half or so, a year I believe actually. All three of them I think have been for the most part very good, but this is the first episode of the three series where I just straight up say this isn't even worth watching. But I'm really hoping that later episodes really emphasize the conversations in this to really bring it. That being said, where do you think the show can go from here? What do you think will happen in the next three episodes? Do you think it'll be a little bit more of a slow burn? Do you think they're going to immediately jump into a conclusion with the next three episodes? Or how do you think the next three are going to go?
So I think we saw this a lot with WandaVision in the fact that Wanda was a very slow burn, and I I know my partner, I know a couple of my friends mentioned that they didn't really like the early episodes because they were all in black and white. They felt like they had no plot, but kind of speaking to what you were just saying, Marvel has a really, really good knack for taking things that you think aren't important or taking things that you may not have liked at first and flipping them around and making them so interesting, so important. Um, so I'm really interested to see what they do with it. I've been thinking a lot about the lady that they actually met. Um, and tried to rob. Pardon me. Um, and the fact that she said you'll never get on the ark. So I think that it could be really interesting if they go back to her and maybe she's important. I think we need to get a picture of what's going on at the TVA right now. We didn't really get any picture of that. And I would really like to see potentially Owen Wilson hopping on board with Sylvie, realizing everything that he was told has been a lie and we need to bring down the TVA or we need to find a better way to protect the timeline. Because my biggest concern is they talk about how these time masters, I believe, or time lords, were protecting and brought everything together into one timeline so everything was not in chaos. And I think that's really what we need to be remembering, is that this is all about protecting the timeline. And Loki and Sylvie are inherently trying to undo that. There's really only one way this ends to me, and I think that it's potentially destroying the sacred timeline. We're getting Multiverse of Madness from Doctor Strange. We have WandaVision already creating another universe within this small town. You didn't really get any of that with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but this seems like the most logical end to me, is that you blow up the TVA.
Oh, I agree. I think that they've referenced that since episode one. That if the timeline gets screwed up, it's going to go haywire. And technically, the end of episode two, they already started that, but they didn't comment on it at all in episode three. So I think you're right, and that's probably where this overall story is going to go. All I know is that there's only one thing I want this show to do, and that is give Owen Wilson's character his jet ski. We want to see him on a jet ski in some way, shape, or form, right? The man's never ridden one before in his variant life. Let's see him on a jet ski.
Please give him the jet ski.
But finding out whether or not Owen Wilson's character rides a jet ski is pretty much going to happen within the next 3 weeks. But to continue talking about things that we've watched right now and to get off the Disney Plus train, on Netflix, we watched something that I've been so excited for, and that is the new Godzilla Singular Point anime. This is the second officially Toho-produced anime project for Godzilla. The first one being a trilogy of films that came out around 2017 and 18, I believe. Those three anime films didn't really do very well with fans, neither the Japanese nor American fan base. So this being a very different take on Godzilla in an anime form. It's no longer a movie, it's just a 13-episode season. It's half 2D, half 3D animation, with the main characters being 2D, and then the majority of the monsters mostly being shot in 3D. It took the series and the franchise in definitely a different direction, having more of an influence on the recent Toho Godzilla movie, Shin Gojira, that came out in 2017. And definitely kind of brought in a lot of the classic monsters for anyone who's a Godzilla fan. As you can see, I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and it brought in a lot of the classic characters and brought in new monsters inspired by classic characters. In this one, we get Jet Jaguar, we get Megalon, we get Anguirus. A lot of these characters returning back for the first time since the 60s or the early 2000s. So it's definitely a really cool anime for Godzilla fans. But Kayla, you actually dove into it. I know you didn't watch the entire season, but I know you dove into it a little bit. What kind of commentary can you give on this anime?
So, kind of like you were just saying, Dominic, for our viewers' context, I don't really watch the Godzilla movies, so this is coming from a completely clean slate. Love anime. Monster movies are really fun. I loved, Kong Skull Island and all that good stuff. That's another Tom Hiddleston movie. And I thought it was really fun. I mean, it's joyful for me. You have some really interesting and fun characters, some really fun character interaction, and my biggest qualm is kind of, as you mentioned, it's 2D and it's 3D. And for me, the 3D is just so jarring. I have this issue with Berserk as well, where a lot of it is in that 3D animation. And for me, it just looks weird, especially when you take the time and the love to hand draw these characters and hand draw this world, and then you just stick Rodan flying through the sky. That being said, the individual Rodan character looked incredible. I just don't ever really like that, that layering of both. It's just too much for me. But I know that you had a completely separate opinion from that, which, to each their own with the animation and the 3D.
Oh yeah, when it comes to animation and anime, for the most part, I'm never really bothered by it. Every now and again, there's a show I've watched where I can't help but go oof, and I agree with you, it can be jarring. I know when Dragon Ball Super first introduced 3D animation, I did not think it looked good. I really don't like watching Dragon Ball Super for that reason. And I know Netflix produced a couple Transformers series. The first one they did is also a series where I can't watch. I just don't think it looks good. But I felt like Godzilla Singular Point, animation wise, I wasn't bothered by it. I could definitely see some of the scenes where, especially later on, they get a lot closer with the monsters when they're fighting Anguirus. I think it is a little jarring to see a fully 3D rendered Anguirus or Megalon or Jet Jaguar, and then you have this 2D character facing them. I could definitely understand that, but I guess I'm never really bothered by it. Maybe because of my exposure to video games, I'm just so used to animation kind of crossing. But to kind of get away from that, because again, that's very much to each their own. This anime, as a Godzilla fan, again, huge Godzilla fan. I have a tattoo of Godzilla. I have collectibles of Godzilla. Huge fan of the franchise. Overall, this I feel like is a really good anime. I think the story itself is definitely did not go in the direction I thought it was going to be. It's super science focused. This is definitely one where you should not have in the background. You're not going to understand what's going on. So it's definitely one that might even encompass a rewatch. Even I can't really explain exactly the story elements that are provided. It's just, again, it's a super interesting story. I thought all the characters were really good. There was no character that was annoying to me. I thought they were all very interesting. I liked the villainous characters. I liked the main characters. And of course, the main focus being the monsters. Every single one was done, in my opinion, excellently. The only problem I really have with Godzilla Singular Point is the fact that the title character, Godzilla, is really just once again a background character. And I think a lot of the more American fans have always had this issue with the 2014 Godzilla movie with Bryan Cranston and Aaron Taylor Johnson. They didn't like how Godzilla is very much a background character, and a lot of the Japanese movies have Godzilla as a background character as well. And this being the first like good anime that Toho produced of Godzilla, it really is a shame that their interpretation, who is very different from the majority of the Godzillas, this being one that transforms, which is only the second Godzilla to ever do this, transforms throughout. He was also the smallest Godzilla for the majority of the series, and he has this very unique look to it. And we're bringing back all these Showa series monsters where, like Jet Jaguar and Megalon, these characters haven't been in the franchise since the 60s. We want to see them fight Godzilla, and they don't. They don't even go close to him. And every time we see Godzilla, it immediately cuts away. And it's kind of a shame because he is meant to be the singular point. He is the end of the world that they kind of keep talking about in the plot. And I think it is kind of a bummer that for a 13 episode series that is about 5 hours in total, I think Godzilla himself is really only in it for maybe 10 minutes if you put all the footage together. And I think it's, once again, just super disappointing because I think a lot of the more American fans, and I've seen in the comments, a lot of the American fans don't like this series because they just wanted a Godzilla Battle Rumble in animation, because the first trailer that dropped really hinted at this being a Monster of the Week kind of scenario. Normally, I'm not a fan of that, and I can't help but say, I wish that's what this was. We've had a lot of very serious movies recently, being Shin Gojira, and then the previous Godzilla anime. So I think people were really hoping Toho really dove into the fun aspect of it. And I think it is a missed opportunity, the way they took it. But again, that being said, as an anime, I think it's super good. The story is very interesting. I definitely think it's rewatchable, and it's a good series. I just think as a Godzilla series, this once again isn't what I want out of a Godzilla anime.
Yeah, I think that you're correct that it's a good anime. As somebody who has been recently introduced to anime, this would not be my recommendation for viewers out there who are trying to get into anime. This would not be my recommendation to you for your first step into it. But as an outing, if we're looking at it as just an anime, it's solid. I really enjoyed the science aspect. Like you mentioned, you need to watch some of these episodes because you have to follow the science, which is a downside. I enjoyed getting to see, Rodan and the Ankylosaurus snake thing kind of come in and out. And I am usually a huge fan of that creeping horror genre of, hey, is it going to come? Is it not? And that's what gives you the stress and the anxiety. But yeah, you want to see these monsters fight. And, even that Rodan fight that you get, I think it's like in episode 1 or 2, was really short and kind of disappointing, and left you really wanting more.
Oh, exactly. And that being said, I hope we do get a second season. As of right now, the Godzilla franchise as a total is kind of up in the air. And I think probably not in this episode, but if we ever dive into the MonsterVerse, we'll definitely dive into potentially where that franchise could go. But as of right now, we have Godzilla Singular Point hinting at a season 2. Spoiler alert, at the end, they do leave the door wide open for a continuation, which, again, as a fan, I want it. I want it so bad. I want to see their interpretation of the character that they hint at the end, because every interpretation they've had so far has been amazing. But kind of like you said, like you want to watch the monsters fight. Like I do love the Japanese interpretation, being Godzilla being this lingering doom. But I think just the way they originally pitched this anime, I kind of wish they did dive into it being a little bit more on the fun side. Like, we can have a serious Godzilla impending doom story, but hey, let's keep it a little bit more fun, like the classic movies as well. Being the fact that, again, the last Toho Godzilla produced thing was Shin Gojira, and that movie is It's very serious. It is not fun at all. And it's, in my opinion, one of the best in the franchise. But I like the back and forth. This is a separate universe, it's a separate Godzilla. I'm more than okay with them having a little bit more fun with it.
Yeah, and I think I think you kind of see that a lot in anime is that it's possible to toe this line of really fun action and creeping horror and plot. My first thought is to reference the Naruto series, where you get this really fun characters, they're interacting, and you have that creeping horror in the background of the Akatsuki the entire time. And it's not until the end where you get this big battle, but you still have fun battle scenes mixed in with plot. And I think that's just kind of, it's missing that balance.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Well, everybody, this has been the very first episode of N.E.R.D. Film and TV Podcast. Please subscribe to this podcast if you like what you hear. We should be on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. If you want more from N.E.R.D, we do have our N.E.R.D gaming podcast. First episode was released last week, focusing on the events of E3. I have been your host, Dominic, with my co-host, Kayla, and we will be coming back in 2 weeks to talk about the latest in Loki, talk about the latest TV shows we've been watching, and of course, the animes we've been watching as well. Kayla, do you have any last words for our listeners?
I don't think so. I have got some other cool, we've got some really cool stuff on the docket. I've got some docuseries that I've been watching that we'll get into hopefully at some point. Otherwise, like, subscribe, share, do the thing.
Of course. Everybody, nerd out.